Hey guys, and welcome back to the From Lawns to Arenas Tennis Podcast. This is the second podcast I'm doing for From Lawns to Arenas. It is a podcast where I talk about things happening throughout the week, things happening in the tennis world that I feel like are interesting to talk about, and things that I'm interested in, tournaments going on this week, players, different stories, weaving in and out of the tennis world at the moment. That's what this podcast is. Also just anything, even talking about the history of the sport, but mostly stuff that's going on at the moment. I appreciate you guys joining in. I'm going to be talking about the Beijing ATP tournament that's going on right now. The quarterfinals are going to start kind of for me later tonight, but really tomorrow morning in China. And then also the Beijing WTA tournament just got underway. That has players like Swiatek, Sabalenka, Rybakina, but also American Coco Gauff, and also Jessica Pegula. So that should be a good tournament as well. My name's Anthony Hirsch, and welcome to the Tennis Commentary Booth. There's other stuff that I want to talk about as well, just kind of brush upon. There's a lot of smaller tournaments kind of going on. Astana, we just had the finish of Chengdu, Zhuhai. On the men's side, what else? We had the tournament in Tokyo. On the women's side, a few things going on. Also, of course, the Labor Cup. Few things going on that I kind of want to touch upon. Also, the Shanghai draw is coming out later today for the men's side, so that should be exciting as well. But yeah, let's start from the Beijing men's tournament. I feel like there's a lot to talk about. And the quarterfinals, as it stands now, are Alcaraz versus Ruud, Dimitrov versus Sinner, Zverev versus Jarry, and Humbert versus Medvedev. It's a pretty great lineup. Some key things that you can notice right away are some really exciting runs from players that have shown very promising potential in the last couple of years, but haven't really found a way to make a big run at a tournament with a lot of big names. But you have Jarry making a good run to the quarterfinals, taking out Tsitsipas along the way. I kind of think Zverev just had a long match against Fokina. He's coming off a tournament win as well. His legs could be running out on him a little bit. And Jarry, I like his game against Zverev, so we'll see. Zverev is playing a really tough level at the moment. Clearly top 10. Some would argue top 5, at least top 5 at the moment. But listen, Jarry's having a good run. Also, Humbert and Dimitrov. Those are great players in the quarterfinals. And then the other thing that I think you would notice right away is that Alcaraz and Sinner, both of them are one win away from a Sinner-Alcaraz rematch. We had the same situation at the U.S. Open, and Sinner wasn't able to beat Zverev in the fourth round there. If he did, we would have had Sinner-Alcaraz in the quarterfinals, a rematch of their crazy match last year in the quarterfinals, but didn't come to light the way that I think a lot of fans wanted it to. But still, it's a great lineup all the same. Alcaraz versus Ruud, that's an interesting matchup. They played 3 times before. The last 2 were both big finals. One in Miami, the other at the U.S. Open, obviously, last year. Not this year, but last year. And then that's a pretty good matchup. I mean, I think Casper has the patience, the anticipation that can kind of maybe frustrate Alcaraz a little bit and kind of get some errors out of Alcaraz, but Alcaraz is playing so good at the moment. I think Ruud isn't quite there, so I definitely like Alcaraz winning in that one. He played crazy against Musetti in the last round. Musetti matchup against Alcaraz is looking just as bad as his fellow one-hander Tsitsipas, his matchup against Alcaraz as well. I mean, obviously the clear thing is that they're both two-handers, but I feel like Alcaraz can really hit through them and hit them off the court, which is a big thing. And Alcaraz is just playing crazy. I kind of expected it, to be honest. He had a little bit of a break after the U.S. Open. I think he's playing it a little bit smarter with the experience of 2022 and feeling like, listen, 2022 was a crazy season for Carlos Alcaraz, but his legs were running out near the end of that season. And I feel like this year he's really figured out a little bit of a better way to go about it, a little bit better way of scheduling it, so that he doesn't have as many physical issues, so that he can bring his best game at the end of the season. And obviously he is physically stronger this year as well. But I think we'll see what happens. But I like Alcaraz at the moment. And I reckon he's going to have a great end to the season, at least in Beijing and Shanghai. It's going to be a really tough player to beat until the indoor season, where maybe things will get a little bit tougher for him, but I still think Alcaraz, don't sleep on Alcaraz ever at this point. But yeah, I got Alcaraz there. Dimitrov versus Sinner. I said it at the end of the last podcast. Grigor Dimitrov is a guy that I've actually really liked all year this year. He's pretty much only lost to the top guys. Zverev. Zverev has beaten him a lot. Zverev beat him in Zverev beat him in Chengdu in the semifinals of the Chengdu tournament before Zverev beat Nishioka in the final there. But Dimitrov lost to Zverev for Roland Garros, and he just keeps losing to Zverev. So as long as Dimitrov doesn't have to play Zverev, he's good. Dimitrov played against Sinner in, I believe, Indian Wells. I believe it was. It could have been Miami. I believe it was Indian Wells. It was in Miami. Okay. Dimitrov played Sinner in Miami. Pretty straightforward first set. Not very high level from either guy, but in the second set, both guys really stepped it up, and it was a really fun match to watch. Dimitrov just mentally couldn't quite break through. And Sinner does play crazy in Miami, but listen, I'm interested. I'm interested to see that matchup. I felt like Dimitrov played really well against Rune, who was actually bringing a really high level at this moment. In the first round, he beat Auger Aliassime, who might be out the top 30 or 40 by the end of the year if he doesn't have the results that he had last year on the indoor hard courts, but. So I don't know if that's really counted as a big top 15, top 20 victory at the moment, because that's just not where Felix's level is at. I think Felix is going to bring it back to a high level again, but it's just not. This season has been a downturn for him, so here's hoping Felix finds it again, but not right now. Not right now. And it's unfortunate, but Rune got the best of him. But Rune is playing a good ball, and Dimitrov still managed to beat him in straight sets 6-3, 7-5. Sinner, though, had a dismantling of Nishioka, who just reached the final, like I said, of Chengdu and lost to Zverev. 6-2, 6-0 for Yannick. Let me tell you, Yannick plays crazy when he's playing his best. Yannick knows what he needs to do. He's got his head down. He knows he needs to work. Sinner knows what he needs to do, and I think it's going to be really tough for Dimitrov. And Sinner is going to, backhand to backhand, Sinner is going to be winning that all day, especially if Dimitrov still reverts to a slice, and Sinner is just going to be all over it, generating pace, and not letting Dimitrov set up the points the way he wants to be able to hit the winners that he wants to. But that's not to say that Dimitrov can't win. It's still going to be a really tough match. Dimitrov can play some great shot making, even in a really fast match, like I'm assuming it's going to be against Sinner. Some fast shots, so we'll see what happens. But I reckon Sinner Alcaraz, number 7, is probably going to be in the cards. If it's not, then I would reckon that maybe Dimitrov actually has a better chance of stopping it than Ruud, just because Alcaraz is playing so crazy at the moment. But the second round matches that Alcaraz and Sinner played against Musetti and Nishioka, only losing 6 games between the two of them, 6-2, 6-2 for Alcaraz, 6-2, 6-0 for Sinner. They're playing crazy, so I reckon we could see a number 7, and I think I talked about it in the last podcast, but that is a match I actually absolutely want to see. Hope we see it in Shanghai as well, matches like that, Medvedev Alcaraz, Sinner Alcaraz. Even though we don't have Novak, there's still some great matchups to be had. Zverev versus Jarry. Jarry, big server, big forehand, big game, great mentality, great fighter. Even when he goes down a set like he did against Arnaldi in the second round, still is able to fight well. And I don't know, Jarry does what Jarry does. He's become a player who I think has been playing at a top 15 level for pretty much most of the season, if not the whole of the season. So he's only climbing up. I think if he wins against Zverev, then he'll be to a career high number 21 in the world, passing a really high level this year as well, Francisco Cerundolo. But he'll be above him at 21st, just behind Ben Shelton, who's at 20, who's rounding out the top 20. But listen, like I said, Zverev's playing a lot of matches, second week in a row. He won the tournament in his first week. He actually had a tough match in his first round as well. against Diego Schwartzman. Schwartzman played really well, but Zverev was just a little bit too much for him with his hard shot making. Schwartzman isn't able to be as effective on the defense, hitting a lot of balls a little bit shorter, but still as talented as ever, fun to watch. And I think he played one of his best matches that he did all year against Zverev, but Zverev too good, and actually very similar score against Schwartzman the first round, 6-7, 6-1, 6-4. Against Fokina, 6-7, 6-2, 6-1. He's playing a lot of tennis as Zverev, and Jarry is on a momentum rush. I think he saved 3 match points against Arnaldi as well, so he'll feel like he has nothing to lose. Whenever you get so close to leaving out of a tournament, it's like you're close to death, but now you're still breathing, you're still alive in the tournament, you feel like you have absolutely nothing to lose. Having that pressure off you can actually really help in a situation like this. And then Humbert versus Medvedev, the last time these two guys played was at ATP Cup, and let me tell you, Rublev versus Humbert was the best match of this tournament so far. Right next to him, De Minaur versus Murray had a crazy epic as well. Both guys played super well. Demon just been on another level recently and got the best of Murray, who Demon is the only guy outside of the big three, I want to say, who's beaten Murray 5 times in a row. But it's a different Murray at this point. But that was a great match. 7-6 in the third set, 8-6 in the tiebreaker. But 7-6 in the third set tiebreaker. Rublev versus Humbert. The two guys are absolutely smacking the ball. Rublev's been playing a high level. Rublev's a deserved mainstay top 10 player, consistent. But Humbert is talented. Hugo Humbert is one of these guys who he's got the mentality even at times that looks really good. He has the passion for the game. Very talented. He has the game. Pretty complete player. He just somehow just can't find a way to cross the line and figure it out. He's lost a lot of close matches this year. I'm hoping the fact that he got through a tight one against Rublev really gives him some confidence moving forward. He got through a really tough, tight match against Sonego as well in the first round, who's also a talented player. But yeah, Humbert versus Medvedev, but Medvedev is playing crazy. He beat Tommy Paul in the first round 6-2, 6-1. Paul's not really in form, but either way, beat De Minaur in straight sets. I reckon Medvedev is going to be too tough for Humbert, but I won't be completely surprised if Humbert does something a little bit shocking there. But that's kind of the quarterfinal breakdown. I actually like Jarry against Zverev to make the semis. And I like Sinner and Alcaraz getting through their matches, but I reckon Sinner versus Dimitrov. I reckon both are going to be good matches, actually. Ruud and Alcaraz and Sinner Dimitrov. A little bit of a hot take. I saw on Instagram, under the Ruud Alcaraz, whatever, the comments that everybody was like, yeah, Ruud has no chance, whatever. People underestimate Casper Ruud at your own peril. I mean, underestimate Casper Ruud at your own peril. French Open 2022. He had reached 3 of the last 5 major finals at Roland Garros 2022. He beat FAA, Taylor Fritz, and Rublev on fast indoor hard courts at the ATP Finals. He got, what else? Got to the final of Miami, beat Zverev in Miami. You can say a lot of things. He beat Holger Rune at the French Open semis, destroyed him in the French Open semis, quarterfinals this year, then beat Zverev in the semis. Both guys not really looking themselves, but either way, the way that Ruud played in that final against Djokovic as well at RG, super high level. If he took that first set, who knows what would have happened. Doubt Casper Ruud at your own peril. He's not the flashiest player, but he's very creative and effective. His anticipation is incredible, has a great lob. Really knows how to work the court and be 3 steps ahead of your opponent. It kind of reminds me of Andy Murray back in the day. Everybody was like, oh, this guy's so boring. I never felt that way. The guy's so talented. Yeah, he's not as flashy as Roger Federer or Fognini, but he uses his talent to be super effective, work the court, hit beautiful shots that just casually nobody else on tour pretty much would be able to hit. And he just knows how to play super high level, does Casper Ruud, and just break down his opponent's games. With a lot of creativity as well, and that's what I like in tennis more than anything. That creativity, which is why I was such a big Federer fan, partly back in the day as well. But yeah, and then Alcaraz Sinner could be another one. Sinner got Alcaraz in their last time in Miami, so I reckon Alcaraz is going to be looking out for revenge. that would be a great match if they both bring the levels that they have brought so far in this tournament. But yeah, I reckon Jari versus Medvedev, and I reckon Medvedev gets through that to get to the final. Sinner versus Alcaraz, my bet would probably be slightly Alcaraz, but I just want to tune in for that one. That would be a great match. I hope I can commentate for that one for Quality Shot Tennis. We'll see what happens. Good chance I won't be able to, but I'm going to be tuning in the whole way through for sure. And maybe I'll be live tweeting my reaction or I'll do something for it. So make sure to subscribe to Quality Shot Tennis if you haven't. I do live streams and other content on there. I have another podcast on there called Tennis 360, and a lot of other great commentators on the channel too. And then also, don't forget to follow me on my social media, which is Commentary Booth on Twitter /X and Tennis Commentary Booth on Instagram. But yeah, and it's just the Tennis Commentary Booth on YouTube. Don't forget to subscribe if you're enjoying it. Don't forget to like the video if you're enjoying it as well. The likes really help the channel. Okay, so that's kind of my Beijing breakdown. And then if Alcaraz and Medvedev reach the final, I think it's going to be an absolute epic. And I don't know who's winning it. I just think it's going to be an epic. That's all I'm going to say. I reckon if I had to bet on anybody, I reckon Alcaraz gets revenge over Medvedev, but just because Alcaraz is playing so crazy, and he wasn't missing a whole lot against Musetti, but we'll see what happens. It's going to be a great event. So that was kind of my Beijing breakdown. Jari, Humbert having some great runs there. Schwartzman also looking in good form. I hope he keeps it up. So did Murray, but they both lost tight matches against players who are in form, Zverev and de Minaur. So shout out to them. But yeah, players losing tight ones, just like Wawrinka this week as well. Wawrinka lost a tight one to Giron, American Giron, Marcos Giron. 7-6 in the third set. All three sets were tiebreakers. This is crazy. 7-6 the first set for Wawrinka, 8-6 in the breaker. 7-6 for Giron the second set, 7-4 for Giron. 7-6 the third set, 8-6 for Giron. So, I mean, it's one of those matches where the margins are so close and they can go either way. So that's just what it is. That's just what it is. And then other tournaments going on. Let's see. So we just had the Tokyo tournament on the women's side. That was the Tokyo Toray Pan Pacific Open in Tokyo for the women's side. And Kudermetova beat Swiatek after Swiatek dismantled Kudermetova in, I believe, in Madrid. And also another tournament earlier this year, was it Doha? Yeah, it was Doha and it was Madrid. Yes, 6-0, 6-1 for Swiatek in Doha. 6-1, 6-1. One more game for Kudermetova in Madrid. Then they got to Japan. 6-2 for Kudermetova. 6-2 for Swiatek. 6-4 for Kudermetova. I mean, Swiatek was not looking herself, especially in that first set. And then the third set, it was a lot tighter, but Kudermetova closed the door. And I don't know what it was, but it was like Swiatek was rushing. She was hitting a lot of unforced errors, and I'm not sure that she needs to be doing that and going for a lot, because she had a lot of unforced errors. I think 55 unforced errors, definitely over 50. Because her defense is probably good enough for Kudermetova, but she just wasn't looking herself. A player, Hantama, a Japanese player, Hantama, who does not have a very high ranking in the WTA rankings, but she was playing very well. I believe she was up 4-1 on Swiatek in the first set. Swiatek actually rallied back to win that set 6-4. But then Swiatek was up, I think, 5-1 or 4-1 the second set. Hantama brought it back to 5-5, and then Swiatek won 7-5. But I mean, Hantama was really challenging Swiatek. Only 5'4" is Hantama, by the way. 127 in the world, and she was really giving a good battle to Iga. I feel like Iga was just making a lot of unforced errors and was just going for a lot. She wasn't really locked in like she needs to be. Swiatek kind of reminds me of Djokovic. I mean, people pretend like they're these like perfect, like athletes, like athletic, perfect players that can just kind of just figure it out. Just kind of play perfect against anybody. It's not that they play perfect against anybody, it's that they find a way to adapt and become a chameleon to figure out a way to win against anybody. It's not that they always play great. Djokovic does not always play great, not at all. You saw him in the first few rounds of the French Open this year, not at all. He wasn't looking that great. His forehand was off, his back, he was hitting a million errors off his backhand. His serve was all over the place. He was making weird movements, like he really was not into it, dialed in physically, mentally. He's not always playing his best. Loses first sets, second sets against random players off in early rounds of majors. Djokovic does not always look his best. But what he does is he finds a way. And then once he starts dialing in and gets in his momentum and rhythm, his mental rhythm, when he dials in, he plays as perfect as we've ever seen a player play. The same thing can be said for Swiatek. And this week she just wasn't mentally dialed in. Listen, tennis is a mental game. It's a game of rhythm. I mean, and anybody who plays tennis at the highest level, they'll agree with you. It's a mental game, largely. I mean, it's a lot more than that too. But it's, if you're not mentally there, Swiatek's hitting a lot of unforced errors, and she just wasn't able to lock in and find her best game. But good for Kudermetova, and then she beats Pegula, who, Jessica Pegula herself was looking rather dominant. I mean, people don't talk about how dominant Pegula can play. She beat Kazatkina 6-1, 6-0 in the quarterfinals of that Japan tournament before beating Sakkari 6-2, 6-3. Sakkari coming off a great win, by the way, in Guadalajara, where she finally got her first title, let alone a first WTA 1000. I'll have to say, I always wanted Sakkari's first title. Sorry, it's not her first title. It's Sakkari's first title since 2019 when she won a clay title out when she was ranked outside the top 50. But her first real title, her first hardcore title, and her first real title as a top player, I always hoped that it would come at the at a big tournament like a major or a WTA 1000 tournament, or even a WTA 500. But I didn't want it to be a 250 because listen, even though she hasn't found a way to go all the way at these tournaments, which is a flaw to her in her career so far, but she's been a top player. She's been a top player. She's gone to a lot of finals, a lot of semifinals. A big tournament, she was ranked number 3 in the world last year when players like Swiatek and Barty were still around. So, I mean, listen, she's been a really high, great player. So, I don't think this proves anything. I just think it's a big relief that she finally went all the way. It feels a little bit poetic that it comes out of WTA 1000 tournament where only 2 of the top 10 players were playing. But not poetic because I'm saying Sakkari wouldn't be able to do it at a tournament where they are there. But she finally, it's not really poetic that it happened, but you feel like this was her time to do it. This was her chance and she took it. This was Sakkari's chance and she took it. Anyway, that's to say, Pegula beat Sakkari in the semis. Sakkari beat Garcia like she did in the semifinals Guadalajara as well. Her second Guadalajara final in a row, the second edition of that tournament. But yeah, then Kudermetova, the 8th seed, beat Jessica Pegula, the 2nd seed in the final. And shout out, because people never talk about Kudermetova, so it was great to see her have a win. It wasn't a WTA 1000 tournament, but listen, there's a lot of top players playing. And listen, Beijing on the men's side, ATP Beijing, it's not a 1000 tournament, but it's better than most... It's better than most 1000 tournaments. The draw is ridiculous. It's like, it's almost like more than a Grand Slam. It's like, you have everyone there. Even Runa signed in, even though he wasn't looking great physically. Even Runa signed in. And he brought a great level, by the way. So, those are kind of my thoughts about some tournaments going on this week. I talked about Chengdu, where, Zverev played very well. Also, Sapulin was in good form at the time as well. Sapulin was in good form. I think I messed up earlier in the podcast. I said that Zverev beat Nishioka in the final. Actually, Zverev beat Sapulin in the final. I've known about Sapulin for a little bit. Roman Sapulin, Wimbledon quarterfinalist this year. Because he did really well at the ATP Cup last year. Not the United Cup, ATP Cup last year. Year after Karatsev did really well as a lower-ranked Russian player. But it was Sapulin who played really, really well. This was before a Russian ban or anything like this. The Russian team was playing at the ATP Cup. And Sapulin basically carried the team. He was playing amazing, really strong two-hander on the backhand, and just really amazing shots, just hitting a lot of pace and really precise, amazing angles. really strong stuff. I liked his mentality as well. Seemed pretty fearless at the time, which is what you want to see. People don't talk about that enough, about not fearlessness, but bravery. I mean, stepping up in a big moment, being able to hit your shots. Those are the players who get to the very top, the players that can play fearless. Because, listen, in tennis, it's all about the tight, big moments. And if you can step up and be clutch, I mean, people talk about clutchness, but it's a big thing, especially in tennis. It's a one-on-one game. You're alone out there. And like I said earlier, tennis is a thing of rhythm and momentum. So sometimes almost by design, you're not clutching up at certain points so that you can reach your peak clutchness at other points. But it's about finding the clutchness, like, on average throughout a whole match where you can really step up and be ballsy, be gutsy in playing the right shots. And that's what tennis is about, and being gutsy. So I think that's a big part of it, is the bravery to really step up in the big moments in the tennis match. And Safiullin was showing that at the ATP Cup, and then he kind of fell off. I didn't hear of him again for the rest of the season last year, and but then I heard about him at Wimbledon, and then he got to the final of Chengdu. In Zhuhai, Karen Khachanov won his first title since Paris 2018. This was only Khachanov's second tournament since Roland Garros. Up until Roland Garros, he was playing the best tennis of his career. Went up a set on Djokovic, pushed him to a tiebreaker. Djokovic then blitzed him in the tiebreaker 7-0, and then starting from that point, Djokovic played incredible in that major, in that Roland Garros tournament. But Khachanov was playing amazing. U.S. Open semifinal, Australian Open semifinal, and finally his first title since Paris 2018. Kind of gives me hope for Grigor Dimitrov, who has barely been making finals. He hasn't won a title since 2017 ATP Finals. He made his first final this year in Geneva since Rotterdam 2018. First one in 5 years, over 5 years. So hopefully Dimitrov, who's had his best season in a while this year, really finds some really good results and is able to win a couple titles. I would really love to see that for Dimitrov. I'd love to see Dimitrov win a bigger title as well. And Karen Khachanov, shout out, because he was top 10 in the world before he had to stop playing for a little bit. So he's gonna find his way back there if he continues on the same level. Dominant at times, including against the player who he beat in the final of Zhuhai, Nishioka, at the Australian Open. Khachanov won the first two sets against Nishioka 6-0, 6-0, 2-0, 40-30 up in the third set. Almost a triple bagel, which hasn't happened in over 30 years, at any level, any round. And he almost does it in the fourth round against Nishioka. Let me tell you what that means. That means that Nishioka won 3 matches in that tournament against the highest level players before he lost that. So listen, Khachanov can really control the court with his forehand. Big serve, but he can be good at net too. Just a very solid player. So shout out to him. Also reached the semifinals of Miami or Indian Wells, I would like to say. I always mix up the two. I can look that up. He lost to Medvedev in 3 sets. It was in Miami, I believe. Yeah, in Miami, semifinals. Match point, he hit a tweener, which is why I think a lot of people remember that match. But anyway, he's been playing a high-level ball, so shout out to Khachanov. Sebastian Korda, also at the Astana Open. Astana Open doesn't have the names that it did last year when it had Daniil Medvedev and Djokovic out of the U.S. Open final this year. But and by the way, that was nearly a all-time semifinal last year if Medvedev didn't pull the ripcord early in the second set tiebreaker. That was the best tennis I saw Medvedev play all 2022. Literally. That's my number one match for a level that I've seen Medvedev play, is that Astana Open semifinal. He got so close to beating Djokovic. I think he was up 5-3 in the second set tiebreaker before Djokovic came back up a set. And Djokovic was excited to play the third set too. Medvedev out of nowhere said, "Nah, I'm done." Anyway, Astana Open is this week. There's some surprising names. I'll tell you some of the names. Sebastian Korda beat Talon Griekspoor. Griekspoor has been easily a top 20 player this year. Very, very good player. He beat him. He was the number 1 seed. Lehechka, the number 4 seed, lost to Medjevic. Medjevic, a Serbian player. Serbian player is doing really well recently, by the way. A little bit better. Not just Djokovic, but also Laszlo Djere, Medjevic. Manarino, Medjevic, Offner, and Korda are the last 4 players in the semifinals. Sebastian Korda, who was playing really well at the start of the season, then just was having injury troubles, now back at a high level once again, which he started to show last week, but is really finding it again this week. He has a good chance to win his first hardcourt title. That's right, Korda has never won a hardcourt title. He has his chance for his first one. It's going to be tough, though. Manarino's tough. Medjevic is tough. Austrian players have been tough. There were 3 Austrian players in the quarterfinals of this tournament. That's a first in ATP history. Dominic Thiem, George Rodionov, and Sebastian Offner. Thiem lost to Offner, and now it's and Rodionov lost to Manarino. Rodionov beat Sebastian Baez, the 2nd seed, which was a really good win, 6-2, 6-4. So Manarino beat Rodionov. Manarino's playing a high level, but that should be interesting, this tournament. Medjevic, really hard server. We'll see how Korda is able to handle that. If I could look up real quick, for example, Korda versus Isner, I'd be wondering how Korda's done against big servers. Korda beat Isner at the 2020 French Open, but Korda is better than Isner on clay in general. Delray Beach, though, Korda beat Isner in 3 sets. So, listen, Korda can handle a big server. I think Korda and Manarino are going to be the 2 players to watch that tournament. Yeah, what else is there to talk about? I really felt like that win in Tokyo for Kudermetova was super interesting, beating Swiatek. And I think some people are going to be like, listen, how is tennis so topsy-turvy? One time Swiatek is winning 6-0, 6-1. The next time Kudermetova is beating her in a tournament. That's the fun of tennis. Some people are going to say, no, that makes tennis weak. It makes it unpredictable. What's the point of even watching? Anything could happen. That's tennis at the highest level of the sport, when all these players are some of the best athletes in the world, and all of these players can play absolutely amazing tennis. That's tennis, the rhythmic, momentum, mental game that it is. That's tennis where across different surfaces, different conditions, variety, different atmospheres, different crowds, different courts, different cities, different stories going on, different things going on, their personal lives, you never know. Different matchups, you never know. There's so many factors going into what makes tennis tennis. And it's a sport of small margins. It's a sport of small margins. So, I mean, some people are going to be like, listen, that makes tennis super weird, but that's just tennis at the highest level, that things can turn around. Everyone is so good, and the thing I love about tennis is that it is a game of small margins, but it's the strength of these players at the highest level where they put their all into getting across the lines, making those small margins, either the ball being a millimeter out or a millimeter in. They do everything in their power to get across the finish line, to make it so that it is a millimeter in. It's a game of millimeters, whether it's fixing their diet, whether it's an extra bounce before they serve, whether it's playing the right strategy, whatever it is, that's tennis. That's tennis. And that's tennis. I think it's not chaotic for that to happen. That's tennis. And people who are betting, I see people betting all the time, and that's cool, that's great, it's fine, but people get super upset at social media. That part isn't fun. I think there needs to be more of a crackdown and discussion about people who are betting, hating on players directly in their social media, because that's not something that I think should be completely disregarded. It's whatever, you're at this kind of stature, people are going to hate on you, that's something that you have to deal with, and it is what it is. But it's kind of crazy to me to go on players' social medias and they're saying stuff like, you suck, you're the worst player ever, and it's like comments on comments like this, or even more personal stuff. I believe it was Taylor Townsend shared a comment towards her that was very personal, bordering, I think it was racist as well, and that is never acceptable. And especially when it's coming towards people who are betting on the sport. So that's something that shouldn't be disregarded, particularly in that Townsend situation where a person's making a comment like that. But that kind of thing is crazy to me. But people who are betting, I bring that up because people who are betting say things like that because they don't understand how tennis looks so easy to them. It's not easy. It's not easy at the highest level. And players do everything they can to cross the line. And they're playing against any player who they're playing to, they're doing everything they can to cross the line in the sport of small margins. And that doesn't make tennis weak or just chaotic. That makes it strong. And that makes it interesting. And that's tennis at its heart. It's players trying to use their strength and everything they have to cross the line of those small margins. It's two players going one-on-one. It's like boxing. It's almost like boxing or more, mixed martial arts, but it's not really. It's not like, it's very physical for sometimes over 5 hours. Very mental, very physical. Two players going one-on-one, trying to read each other, trying to anticipate. But it's more elegant. It's like a beautiful, elegant version of boxing, if that makes sense. But it is a thing of strength. It's not a thing of weakness and chaos. It's a thing of strength, and it's a thing of dedication, motivation, and simply, perseverance. Persevering through all the kind of roadblocks and obstructions to get through the line and make sure that you end up on the winning side despite the very small margins that the sport brings. Finding a way on the winning side. And that's what's been amazing about Serena on the women's side. Graf, Navratilova, back in the day, Suzanne Lenglen, whatever, Rod Laver. But the big three, Federer, Nadal, and Djokovic, they found a way to dominate despite these small margins. And we got spoiled to that. But tennis is tennis. And tennis, the strongest win out. And they put their heart into everything to make sure the small margins go towards their side and end up in their winning favor. But yeah, those are my thoughts on that. And then I don't know if there's that much else I really want to talk about. There are a few other interesting things. Really enjoy having this podcast. I'll be here next week as well. I'm hoping to find a way to dedicate a day towards doing this podcast. We'll see what happens. I'm going to be filming a Tennis 360 podcast tomorrow. It's hard for me now with China and these tough time. It's a tough time zone for me. They're 12 hours ahead of me. But Shanghai used to be one of my favorite tournaments. But I'm going to be honest. It was at one point it was my favorite Masters tournament. I know that's an underrated kind of weird opinion, but I love the fast courts. I feel like fast courts create for really fun shot making. At the lower levels, the play can just be kind of like abysmal play sometimes because players at the lowest level because the courts move so fast. But at the highest level, players finding a way to adapt, improvise, be creative, rush to the net, play aggressive, play touch shots, find a way to hit crazy shot making, great rallies, super fast towards each other. Shanghai always came up with great shots. I love the courts there. Chinese crowds are always super into it. The atmospheres are always cool. So, yeah, it is what it is. I think I'm excited for the Shanghai tournament, and that should be good. Labor Cup happened. I know that happened a little while ago. Just to quickly touch upon it, I feel like Labor Cup wasn't as hyped up this year as for a lot of the other years, and now that Labor Cup and Davis Cup have both kind of passed, maybe I'll end off the podcast actually talking a little bit about it. I think it's an interesting time because I think for most of the tennis history, I think actually Team Europe would have a clear disadvantage against Team World for most of history. But the last 5 years with the big three playing and a lot of great European players being the players at the forefront of the sport for the last 20, 25 years, I think, mostly 20 years, I think it's really created a time where Team Europe has a big advantage in the tournament. But this year, Team World, we're seeing it revert back to Team World at the moment. And that's part of the reason is because none of the top 5 players played. Djokovic didn't play. Alcaraz didn't play. Tsitsipas and Rune pulled out. Casper Ruud played, who I think is now 9th in the world, following the U.S. Open. But still, I think we'll see if in the future years we get top 5 players playing. I think what makes Laver Cup exciting is this kind of personal approach to the players, seeing them interact with one another in a very kind of fun setting, kind of like they're just friends playing an exhibition, but it is very competitive. So you see them giving advice and strategy and hyping each other out. It's not just a joke. The players are playing competitively. That's part of why the matches are counted into ATP heads. So, and it's the all-black courts, the fact that Rod Laver and Federer started it, that novelty. I mean, listen, any tournament is only as big as you make it, right? I mean, what money, points, sponsors, there's all of these kind of things, crowds, fans, your box, your friends watching you. Those are the things that we prioritize just in life when we think about that kind of connection to sports, right? But I think that a tournament is only as big as you make it. I mean, Wimbledon started up and we were like, hey, we're the first tournament, we're the biggest one. Since then, in the last 150 years, Wimbledon is the biggest tournament because they said it. They claimed it. They claimed being the biggest tournament, and it was the first tournament. Tennis really started court tennis or real tennis. People playing this crazy game in an indoor atmosphere. I don't know if you know of this. I actually got a chance about a decade ago when I was 12 or 13 to go to one of these court tennis, real tennis courts. That's the original tennis. People playing in that kind of atmosphere, hitting a ball, this super hard version of a tennis ball inside of that kind of court, hitting against the walls, kind of paddle style. It's kind of this weird version of tennis. Then they try to move that onto lawns, play that on grass just in people's backyards, and play just with a ball over the net. Not with a super hard ball or anything like that, just a regular tennis ball like we know nowadays. And then they moved it to like an official court, and then Wimbledon got started. And a tournament only has as much prestige and history as you get it, as you give to it. I mean, Laver Cup might go on for another 150 years like Wimbledon. It might also end next year. It depends. We'll see in the future how much hype is given to it. I think it can be helped with a player like. As much as Borg versus McEnroe is a very good spectacle, taking in the history of the sports, two of the sport's biggest names, two of the greatest ever, not the two greatest ever, but two of the greatest ever. And that obviously an incredible rivalry, both very different, contrasting personalities, but I feel like if we're taking it honestly, Bjorn's personality probably isn't the best for this type of team event, and I think that it can be replaced for sure. Federer talked about maybe taking it over. There's some other interesting names as well. We'll see if McEnroe steps down. Maybe Federer and Agassi or something could be interesting. Federer and Hewitt, maybe Leighton Hewitt, who's obviously a very passionate kind of personality as well. But yeah, we'll see. But the Laver Cup was not as interesting this year. They put on a lot of players who didn't have the prowess in doubles as a lot of players on Team World did. Like Davidovich Fokina, Artur Fils, I feel like they really didn't know what they were doing on a doubles court, for example. Hubert Hurkacz kind of helped the Team Europe team, but he was like their one lone savior. So that was not great for him. And just overall, Monfils didn't take the match seriously that much against Felix and just didn't have what it took. And that kind of brought it back because Monfils was saying, hey, it's not that serious, but you never know. And listen, Davis Cup, I'm talking about prestige of these team tournaments. I hope Davis Cup isn't left in the mud because Davis Cup is a tournament that I think, I know Davis Cup is a little bit behind now. It happened 2 or 3 weeks ago. But just to make a quick point, and then to kind of round off the podcast going into the Beijing quarters that are starting later tonight/tomorrow morning in China. But just to quickly round off this point on Davis Cup, Davis Cup is a tournament which has been going on as long as the sport has been going pretty much, like late 1800s, early 1900s, or early 20th century, late 19th century. And It's a tournament that is so unique to tennis, came with a lot of prestige. The crowd atmosphere is always absolutely crazy. The best 3 out of 5 sets happening throughout a tennis season. It's almost separate from the Grand Slams, always has so much emotion, prestige, players playing for their country. I hope it's not left behind because of this new format, where really the knockout stages, I believe, happen all at 1 week, all in one location. That's not what Davis Cup is. Best 2 out of 3 matches, best 2 out of 3 sets, everything's shortened down. It should happen throughout a year. The timing isn't great as well. After the US Open, we had a lot of withdrawals, including Alcaraz. Hopefully Davis Cup is safe because it's starting to really blend in with a lot of these team tournaments. And as a tennis fan, that's really not, as a history of tennis fan, history buff, that's something I really don't want to see happen because Davis Cup is special and that history and prestige helps make it special as well. And I don't know, I really don't want to see Davis Cup go, but it's becoming too similar to Labour Cup, to United Cup, especially ATP Cup, but even United Cup. It's very similar. I hope Davis Cup can stick around, and I hope Labour Cup can see its improvements because it is fun to watch. It is fun to watch players on the side hyping each other up, strategizing, having fun, but also being competitive in this kind of really unique atmosphere. But we'll see what happens. Also, there's Hopman Cup exhibition that happened, I believe, right after Wimbledon, before the US Open. I think I'm forgetting a tournament as well. Isn't there one more team tournament? I believe there's another one even. But anyway, there's a lot of team tournaments. We'll see what happens with that. But those have been some of my thoughts. The Labour Cup was 1 year after Federer retired. And there are still some fun shots. Ben Shelton seemed to thrive in that atmosphere. I like seeing Arthur Feast get his chance to shine. He's a very talented player. He had a crazy off an overhead Federer style right past Raonic 1 year after Federer retired from the Labour Cup, which I felt like was almost in the spirit of Federer. There was some fun stuff, some hype moments at Labour Cup, but it really wasn't what it was the last few years, so hopefully it gets it back. We got Beijing going on the women's side. On the men's side, Alcaraz versus Ruud. I don't sleep on Ruud, but Alcaraz is playing crazy. Dimitrov versus Sinner, both great shot makers. That's going to be a great shot-making match. 2 talented guys, very talented guys, both of them. Humbert, another talented guy, taking on Medvedev. Zverev versus Jarry. Zverev is on a winning streak, but Jarry's playing crazy. Alcaraz taking on Kasper. We'll see what Kasper has for him. And on the women's side, I mean, Sabalenka, Goff, Swiatek. We'll see what happens. There's a lot of interesting matches there. Zhang taking on Rybakina. That's going to be hard-hitting. Zhang played like top 3, top 5 level at the US Open to reach the quarterfinals. Took out Ons Jabeur comfortably in straight sets. And Swiatek has a pretty good draw as well. Azarenka's out on her side. She could have potentially, Vondrousova is out on her side as well. She could have maybe Garcia. Where would that be? I think in the quarterfinals. So Swiatek has a great draw. She could play Kudermetova in the semis, I think. Or the quarters. It's hard for me to tell here. But anyway, Swiatek has a good draw. We'll see if she does better than she did in Tokyo. But that's going to be super fun to watch. And then, in Beijing, we could have Sinner Alcaraz, another Alcaraz Medvedev, which was crazy at the US Open. And I'll be here in the next podcast talking about all of it and just giving more thoughts about tennis. Thank you guys for watching. I've been Anthony Hirsch with the Tennis Commentary Booth. Don't forget to subscribe if you enjoyed it. Don't forget to like the video if you enjoyed it as well. Don't forget to subscribe to Quality Shot Tennis as well. That's another channel which I'm a part of. Find me over there with the Tennis 360 podcast as well, which I do, like I said, with Eliza Westcott. Tennis 360. And don't forget, guys, to subscribe to the channel, like the video if you enjoyed it. Hope you guys enjoyed it. This has been from Lawns to Arenas Tennis Podcast, and I will see you guys at the next one. We got Beijing underway on the men's and the women's, and we got Shanghai coming up. See you guys at the next podcast.